You're listening to Bad Dog Agility, bringing you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility. And now, here are your hosts, Sarah and Esteban.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 157. Today's podcast is brought to you by Elite Science. Unlock your dog's full potential with a unique competitive edge solution, 1TDC. 1-tetradecanol complex is a patented blend of unique fatty acid oils designed to safely and effectively keep joints and muscles at their best to maximize performance and shorten recovery time. 1TDC is the next generation of fatty acids and is used by many current and past national agility champions and world team members. All of our listeners will automatically qualify for a great 1TDC special offer by purchasing online at bda1tdc.com. That's BDA, the number 1, TDC.com.
Today's podcast is also brought to you by Back on Track. Dog agility is a demanding sport and can be difficult on the body, both the dogs and the humans. Back on Track specializes in dog blankets, beds, and wraps that keep muscles warm and reduce the pain in joints. If you've got a nagging knee, calf, or ankle injury, Back on Track's human products can help get you back in the ring. Visit Back on Track at backontrackproducts.com.
Today, we're going to be talking about the comparison trap. All of us, every single one of us, compare ourselves to others. We may or may not do it in agility, but there's probably some aspect of your life where you are comparing yourself to somebody else and maybe feeling bad about where you are.
Oh, I think that's absurd that people don't do it in dog agility. It's in every part of dog agility. It's how we measure ourselves. So when we look at a performance and we see someone do something better, like their dog has a better dog walk, you're interested in that, right? It lets you know that, hey, my dog walk can be better. I'd like to try and do something about that. You know, if someone's getting a tighter turn in a specific spot, I want to learn about that. And that's how I've been able to do a lot of improvement, by constantly comparing my dog to other dogs. But the comparison trap, I think, once you throw the word trap in there, we're focusing on kind of the negative part of this comparison.
The downside.
Because, let's start with the good part, because I think it's like you said, human nature. It's something everybody does in every facet of our lives. All right? We even compare ourselves to ourselves. Like, what do I know now that I didn't know 4 years ago? Well, hopefully you've had some kind of self-improvement, right? Or learning or that sort of thing. And so it can be a very positive driving force, right? For self-improvement, for motivation, something that helps us get better. You want to be a better parent, right? You want to be the best version of yourself. And that's where I think comparison is by itself neither good nor bad, but it can be good or bad when we give it that value. And so I think it's important to start with basically these 2 points. It's normal. Everybody does it. It's in every part of our lives, and it can be a very powerful force for good in your life.
But where it can really affect us in a negative way is when we don't let it drive us. Instead, we let it hold us back, push us down, make us feel bad, or when we react to it by having a hard time being genuinely happy for somebody else who's doing well because they're doing better than we are.
Yeah, I think in those situations, it can definitely turn into a trap, something that paralyzes you, something that can really suck the joy out of agility. And that's a large part of why we do dog agility. You know, dog agility, there's so many things for so many different people. You know, for some people, it's just pure hobby. Other people, it's just pure relationship with dog. For other people, there's a sports competition element to it. You know, other people, it's part of their livelihood. They're dog trainers. So there's something for everyone in this great sport. But I think, that's where it can be an issue. And I'll start with my story. And, I just recently lost my old golden. She was 16, I think, a couple months ago. Gypsy, fantastic, sweet golden retriever. And way back when we started in agility, we started agility so long ago that the minimum age to compete at an American Kennel Club trial, AKC trial, was 12 months back then.
That's right.
Now I believe it's 15 months. And I got her from a litter. It was a litter of 9, and there were several other, dog sports, obedience, agility type people. And this is back when, obviously agility was very new. And, I wanted to be the first one to get a title in that litter, like the novice title, right? Because I told the breeder, hey, I want to do this, I want to get this title. And I remember going to my trainer at the time, it was Kim Donnell of Wagon Tails. We used to live in Austin, Texas. This is way back when. And I was like, all right, Kim, look, right? I need to be the first puppy owner in this litter. I want to get a title first. And she's like, all right, well, let's pick a debut date. And it was something ridiculous. It was like 3 months. And she ended up getting it, I think, in 14 months, her novice title.
Right.
I think she went 3 straight. And then I think 4 runs to get either standard or jumpers. Anyway, after 4 runs, she had both novice titles. And so, we got it done. But I did like the weekly class and then like 1 additional private lesson a week with Kim to kind of get her ready. And I think that was a great example of a healthy comparison, right? Because the other owners are posting on the list, oh, we're going to debut at such and such a date, or today we learned the seesaw, or today we got on the table. And so you're kind of measuring yourself there. But it was healthy. It motivated me. I ended up taking some private lessons, doing a little bit of extra, getting really excited about it. And it was great. And I think that's solid because even if I hadn't been the first to get a title or whatever, and honestly now I'm not sure that I did. I think I did.
I don't remember.
I'm like 90% sure. See, that's how unimportant it is.
That's right.
16 years later, she's lived this amazing life and spent all this time with me. And I don't really care per se about that achievement, even though it meant like a lot to you at the time. But I think that's how I kind of feel like it was healthy. It was like a motivator and not something where I would have been like very angry, disappointed in myself or her or upset for other people. In fact, over the years, you follow all the accomplishments of the other people who have dogs in that litter, right? Mm-hmm. And all the great achievements that litter, all the titles they won, and obedience championships and agility championships and things like that. So, all of that was really fun, and I think that's a good example of healthy stuff. But occasionally, and I've had this with friends or other people that in agility, they'll come to you and it's really eating them up in a very bad way that a littermate to their dog, they personally are struggling so much with their dog, and then this littermate in some other part of the country is just killing it. They're going out there and they're already oh man, they're already qualified for nationals. Oh, they're just doing double Q after double Q. They're just running clean all the time. And it's really crushing this person.
Right. And I think, it's like sibling rivalry, basically, right? And we actually had somebody send us a Facebook message about this topic, and we hadn't gotten around to focusing on it. And so we wanted to come back to it on this podcast, but they had that exact question. How do you deal with sibling rivalry in dog sports? And one of the things that I thought was, well, there's really 2 ways that sibling rivalry can really happen. One of them is really in your head. Like the other person is running their dog and they're doing well, but they're not doing anything to hurt you besides doing well, right? They're not actively, being rude to you or making snide comments or things like that. And we still can feel that comparison trap, feel those negative feelings because we're making the comparison between our dogs and theirs. And if that's the way it is, then you have to adjust your own mental approach and focus on you and your dog. Focus, as Esteban said at the beginning, on being the best version of yourself, being the best version of your team, bringing out the best in your dog, and not really worrying about other people. I think if you have the kind of sibling rivalry where both parties are involved, where somebody else is making is actively doing things to make you feel bad, posting comments about your dog or asking why aren't they're in a show yet and things like that, that's a little bit harder you don't have control over that entire interaction.
Well, so aside from litter mates, I think there's a couple of other examples in agility that are pretty common where you get a little bit of that rivalry / comparison, and that's with dogs that you entered a beginning class with at the same time. Either you were at the same novice trial, you debuted at the same show, right? 2 dogs, and then you kind of tracked their career over a couple of years. or at the same training facility. You enter the same, introduction to obstacles class with somebody, and, their dog takes to it really well, and they blaze through, and they're trialing, and you're stuck maybe a couple classes behind, and you always kind of think of that. You associate your dog with that dog, right? And it kind of happens, not consciously.
Right.
It just kind of happens. The comparison's there, and it's something you just need to be aware of, I think, and try and move past.
It reminds me so much of children, too, because, children are put in grades, and they're all, in the same grade. So how's your kindergartner doing versus somebody else's kindergartner? And it's kind of the same idea. You have dogs that are starting out at the same place, so why are they not ending up at the same place?
Well, it's very interesting that you bring up that parenting element. Of course, Sarah and I have a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old.
7-year-old.
7 now, yes.
2 days ago,
had a
yeah.
birthday. I'm going to mess that up for another week or two minimum. Because as parents, there's always the concern in the back of your mind that it's a reflection of not your child per se, right, or your child's ability, but the parenting that you have been providing your child, right? And maybe that's the reason they're not doing quite as well as that child over there. You're not teaching them enough. You're not providing them with the same resources and opportunities that other parent is doing. Basically, you are being out-parented. And even if you say, oh, well, it's the kid, well, in this modern scientific era where everything is genetics, there's always the concern that even that was passed on half by you. And so either way, you're ultimately responsible for your child's success, right? And so that can weigh very heavily on you as the parent. So for those of you who have that parent-child paradigm with your dog, right? Either you're thinking my training is deficient, I'm not providing the right opportunities for my dog, I can't do the skill, I can't get this front cross right, I'm the one, I know I'm messing up this dog, that person over there is so much more talented than I am holding my dog back. And so I think when comparison leads you down that road, that can be a very unhappy place if you don't turn it into a motivator, right? Because you can say all of those things and then immediately turn around and add on. But I know how I'm going to get better at these front crosses. Or I know that I'm going to train now 3 times a week instead of 1 time a week. I'm going to do my 1-hour class, and then I'm going to practice on my own for 10 minutes on Wednesday and another 10 minutes Friday night after work.
I think that there is a story behind every team. And it's difficult to make comparisons to other people when you don't know their full story. You know your full story. You know where you are. You know where you've been. You know how you've struggled through different things. You don't know that person's story. You don't know if it was easy getting there or hard. You don't know if they had some of the same issues you have and worked through them or not. And I think that can be very difficult. And that's where I think sometimes the positive side of Facebook, by positive side, I mean everybody is putting out the best version of themselves publicly a lot of times. They're putting out their best runs. They're putting out the best snippets from their dogs. And so you're comparing your entire, dog relationship skill set with somebody else's highlight reel, right? And so that can be an unfair comparison to you.
Man, that's a really good point, because that's something in social media that psychologists, other social scientists are studying, because it's true. You really can create and cultivate an image on Facebook that is that's probably not going to be an accurate representation of your life.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but as the viewer, as the consumer of that information,
you're looking left, you're looking right, and everybody is, posting clean runs, but they're not showing you, no one's throwing up their NQs, or when their dog, I don't know, breaks a weave pole and runs out of the ring, or something crazy happens. You're not going to be putting that out there, talking about what an awful trainer you are.
Right.
So, that's going to be really tough too.
And I think for some people that are relatively new to the sport or haven't had a lot of experience with a lot of different breeds of dogs, especially beginners, they may not realize how much that can affect the pace of how a dog runs. And there's nothing, not runs, but learns. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're in a class with a big Rottweiler, let me tell you, Rottweiler brains, develop slowly. They're puppies for longer in their mentality than, maybe some of the small dogs or other breeds. And so sometimes you put a classroom situation together and you have dogs that just, mentally are developing slower, and those handlers are comparing their dog to a different breed that has different tendencies. And so that's an unfair comparison too.
That leads me to another really good one, and that is just straight up breed comparison in your own breed. So let's say you have a border collie and your border collie doesn't happen to be particularly fast. Maybe they had some issues or they have some anxiety or something like that where, they don't yet have that confidence where they're running all out. And you don't really know that because it's your first dog, right? You're new to agility. You haven't been to a competition yet. There's a wide mix of dogs. And then suddenly you go to your first trial and you realize that the majority of dogs at the trial are border collies like yours. And oh, by the way, border collies rule the sport. You didn't really understand that until you showed up at your first trial. And now you feel bad, right? You feel bad about you and your dog because you're realizing that people are expecting, as a border collie, your dog to possibly be better than they are. And I think it can happen with any breed, but mostly I'm thinking about like border collies, Shelties. I think those are the kind of breeds, or any aspect of a breed where it's characteristic of that breed and your dog is not that, right?
Right.
So if you have a golden retriever and your golden retriever is, say, a little aggressive toward kids, they're very uncomfortable around kids, well, that's not what a golden retriever is. Golden retrievers are supposed to love kids. Kids are supposed to be able to jump on their heads and things without problems. And because you're not typical for that breed, you compare your dog to other dogs within your breed, and that can be a problem. So in agility, I look a lot at border collie people because, that's a comparison trap that they're falling into. It makes them feel bad.
So let's wrap up with some kind of healthy ways to reframe this. We kind of touched on it at the very beginning, but...
Well, I think the first thing is understanding that it's normal, because what's a common piece of advice? In fact, it's advice I've gotten over the years, and it's advice I probably gave people, and that's, you shouldn't compare yourself to other people, right? Raise your hand right now if someone's told, if you've heard that in the last week, right? Don't compare yourself to people. Don't compare yourself to so-and-so. Well, you know what? Why don't you just tell me not to breathe?
Right. It's unfair because you can't really control it. You have to control your reaction to it.
Right. So what I want you to do is kind of take it to the next level, right? It's not that the comparison itself is bad. It's, are you using it? That would be like saying mutant superheroes are inherently this or that. Like get rid of all the mutant superheroes. No. Some of them are going to be good. Some of them are going to be evil. All right, and I think that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
So if you find yourself falling into a comparison trap, and I would say that falling into a comparison trap could be you are feeling bad about yourself, you are resenting somebody else, you are...
Someone else's success.
Somebody else's success, right.
Or if you can't be happy unless other people are losing, right?
Right.
I think
those
you're
are
in
all
an
part
unhealthy state of mind.
Right. Those are the comparison trap. And so I want you to take any of those feelings and think to yourself, how can I use this and what do I have control over? So maybe I use it to motivate myself. Maybe I use it to figure out a different way of training something where I'm not as successful at it as somebody else. Maybe even going to that person and finding out how they trained it, getting more information. If I feel that other people are, actively competing with me in an unhealthy way, how can I somewhat shield myself from that or basically ignore that and just concentrate on myself and my dog?
And I think this is a really big deal. I think this is especially powerful for the novice handler, for the newcomer to the sport. For those of you listening, you're just coming into the sport, you're just getting started. Understand this, and I'm going to tell you an uncomfortable truth right here, that there are a lot of people at the very highest level of the sport today who really struggle with this. Okay, and you're going to see it. You're going to see it on their Facebook posts. You're going to hear it in their conversation. And I don't want you to fall into this trap, because this is a trap of your own making, right? And it's going to lead to your own profound unhappiness. It's going to really impair your enjoyment of the sport and then by extension, your relationship with your dog. And if you can get this squared away and be aware of it and see it coming and understand the nature of it, and use it to your advantage, I think you're going to be at a huge advantage in your own career. You're going to be set up for a really good path, and you're going to be able to overcome a lot of difficulties that you're going to run into in dog agility.
And what's even more important is you're going to be happier while you do it. Well, one place that I know there's going to be a lot of comparison going on, hopefully healthy competition, is going to be the National Agility Championships, which are next week. And we'll be going to that with Golden Retriever Gitchy. And we've just recently announced the before and after course. This is our third year running this course, so for those of y'all who have been with us for a while, you may recognize that name. But the before and after is a video series that we do built around the National Agility Championship, where Esteban is going to, before he walks the course, do an analysis of every course map at Nationals.
I usually do it from the hotel because the AKC gets the course maps early, so before I even get to the show site, I analyze the maps, even before I brush my teeth.
That's how real it is.
That's how real it is.
That's right. This is real time. And he does that so that you can really see how he uses a course map to his advantage, how he breaks down the challenges and makes a tentative plan, how he finds the traps on course. And we do it before he walks and before he runs, because a lot of times, even you may not even be conscious of it, but when you've already seen a course run or you've already run it yourself, it's like you already know the answers. And so when you do that analysis on the course map, you're kind of using more knowledge than a typical person would have when they're just looking at the course map. So we want to develop everybody's skill at reading the course map. Then, after he runs, good or bad, he analyzes his actual performance. He talks about what he did really well, what went right, why it went right, how his position, his timing, and all these aspects of agility, and really breaks it down with the coach's eye, like we do with a lot of our videos, and talks about what went well and also what went wrong.
Yeah, so what's the point of all that? Big deal, right? You watch me do the course map, you watch me analyze my run. Well, once you see how I look at my runs and how I do my course maps, now you can start to develop your own routine, right? How many of you out there are a little confused about what you should be looking at? It's not useful for you to look at video unless the instructor is willing to look at it for you because you don't know what you're looking for, right? How many of you have access to an instructor where you can kind of look at the course map together? Well, now's your chance. You're going to have that course map, take a look at it, see what you see, kind of put together a little 5-minute talk in your head, and then see what I saw. And then compare your analysis with my analysis. Watch my run and say, I think he did this here. I think they dropped the bar because of that. Gitchy went off course because I think he was showing her this. Let me see what he thinks.
That's right. And this year, Sarah Baker is joining us for the before and after. She's going to do the same thing with all of the rounds with her lab, Rice. Rice was the preferred National Agility Champion 2 years ago. She's running this year at preferred 20. So now you have 2 handlers and 2 dogs, by the way, 2 very good handlers that are willing to put that out there no matter what happens and let everybody else learn from it.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't heard of her by now, Sarah Baker is one of our sponsored athletes here at Bad Dog Agility. She's the 2-time and reigning 20-inch National Agility Champion for AKC with her Border Collie hops.
Right, but she'll be doing the analysis for her Labrador Retriever, Rice.
Rice, that's right.
So this is a great course for anybody whose dog is rehabbing, whose equipment is under snow, because there's no exercises for you to do. We're really concentrating on the skills of course map analysis and video review. And there's also kind of this reality TV aspect of it. It gives you 2 dogs to really watch and cheer for if you're watching the live stream, and kind of enhances that whole experience. So people have really enjoyed it the last 2 years. The first year, we had no idea if it would be interesting or not, but people got a lot of value out of it. And we made it a very low-cost course because we want it to be available to a lot of people. So it's $29 for this course, and you're getting the before analysis for every run, the after analysis for every run. If they make the Challenger round or finals, they'll do those analyses as well. So we hope that everybody who's interested in that will sign up, and we'll have a link in the show notes. And that's it for this week's podcast. Happy training!
Why did Beethoven get rid of his chickens? All they said was bark, bark, bark.